A father went to say goodnight to his 7-year-old son, very well knowing that if he didn't, his son would have trouble sleeping. It was a nightly routine between them. He entered the dimly lit room where his son waited under his blanket. With the first glance, the father could tell there was something unusual about his son tonight, but couldn't put his finger on it. He looked the same, but had a grin that drew from ear to ear. "You okay, buddy?" the father asked. The son nodded, still with the grin, before saying, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." The father chuckled a bit before getting on his knees to check, only to satisfy his son. There, under the bed, pale and afraid, was his son. His real son. He whispered, "Daddy, there's someone on my bed." The father's heart skipped a beat as he heard those words. Confusion and fear washed over him as he slowly turned his gaze towards the bed. To his horror, he saw a figure lying on the mattress, an exact replica of his son. The imposter had the same grin, but there was something sinister in its eyes. Trembling, the father mustered the courage to approach the bed. As he got closer, he noticed that the imposter's grin grew wider, almost unnaturally so. The room seemed to grow colder, and a sense of unease settled in the air. "Daddy, help me!" the real son whimpered from beneath the bed. His voice was filled with fear and desperation. The father's instincts kicked in, and without a second thought, he reached under the bed and pulled his real son out. The imposter on the bed let out a chilling laugh, its grin stretching impossibly wider. "You can't save him," it hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "He's mine now." The father felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins as he faced the imposter. The room seemed to darken, the air heavy with an oppressive presence. The imposter's voice echoed with a haunting resonance, sending chills down the father's spine. Refusing to succumb to fear, the father held his real son tightly, his protective instincts kicking into overdrive. He locked eyes with the imposter, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "You will not take my son," he declared, his words laced with determination. "I will do whatever it takes to protect him." With those words, the imposter's grin twisted into a malevolent sneer. Its eyes glowed with a sinister light as it lunged forward, its hands reaching out towards the father and his son. But the father was prepared. In a desperate attempt to defend his son, the father swiftly grabbed a nearby wooden baseball bat. With a primal roar, he swung it at the imposter, aiming for its head. The impact reverberated through the room, but the imposter seemed unfazed. To the father's horror, the imposter's head twisted unnaturally, facing him with an unsettling grin, its body contorted and twisted, moving in ways that defied the laws of nature. The room filled with a sickening sound of bones cracking and joints popping as the imposter's limbs elongated and twisted into grotesque shapes. The imposter's eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity, and its voice transformed into a guttural, inhuman growl. It lunged at the father, its movements unnaturally swift and agile, as if it defied the laws of physics. With each strike of the baseball bat, the imposter seemed to regenerate, its body morphing and shifting to repair the damage. The father's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the gravity of the situation. This was no ordinary imposter. It was a malevolent entity, a creature that fed on fear and thrived on chaos. Drawing upon his love for his son and his unwavering determination, the father refused to back down. He fought with every ounce of strength he had, dodging the imposter's attacks and landing blows whenever he could. But no matter how hard he fought, the imposter seemed to be one step ahead, its twisted grin never faltering. As the battle raged on, the room itself seemed to come alive. Shadows danced and writhed along the walls, whispering haunting melodies that sent shivers down the father's spine. The air grew thick with a putrid stench, a mixture of decay and malevolence. In a final act of desperation, the father remembered the talisman he had retrieved from the attic. With trembling hands, he reached into his pocket and clasped the talisman tightly. It pulsed with a faint protective energy, as if it sensed the father's desperation. Summoning every ounce of courage he had left, the father channeled his fear into a burst of determination. He raised the talisman high above his head and shouted ancient words of banishment, commanding the imposter to leave his son and their home. A blinding light erupted from the talisman, engulfing the imposter in its radiant glow. The imposter let out a blood-curdling scream, its body writhing and contorting in agony. The room shook violently as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. And then, in an instant, the light faded, leaving the father and his son standing in a room bathed in silence. The imposter had vanished, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread and the echoes of its haunting laughter.